Oh man, I don't know what we're gonna do without Shane here. Here, I'll start out. I'll start out with
We'll
something.
probably like swear less. We'll probably talk about Canada a little bit less.
Well, do you guys go ice fishing in Canada? Because I was thinking about it today, and I'm like, I've never been ice fishing. Have you ever been ice fishing?
I've never been ice fishing. I guess I'm a very bad Canadian. Do Americans know what ice fishing is, or do you think that we just fish for ice?
I've heard that you give it a giant net, and you try and get giant blocks of ice inside of a net, and then you actually take it home, and that's how you guys get your ice cubes.
Yeah, and actually, the way that the Slurpee came about is that people go ice fishing up in northern communities in Canada, and then they bring the ice back, and they have an exclusive contract with 7-Eleven, and then 7-Eleven turns all the ice fishing bounty, and they mix it with pop syrups, and that's how you get Slurpees.
No way, dude. Wait, do you guys have
Yeah.
7-Elevens up there? Or is this just an American thing? 7-Elevens.
No, we have 7-Eleven. Winnipeg, Manitoba is the Slurpee capital of the world for like
Oh,
13 years running.
I don't know about that. Like, is that
No,
actually
it's
a
no, no,
stat?
no, no, no. It's like actually a stat. Like they celebrate us every year and they give us a sign,
What? How many 7-Elevens y'all have?
like one on every corner.
We
And
have
it's
one on like every corner.
yeah, but we drink more Slurpees than you. Like we have the most Slurpees per capita. Like my entire life in Winnipeg. It's so the thing about Winnipeg is people think that it's cold all the time, and in the winter it is, but in the summer it's really not. Like in the summer it's actually extremely hot. We just don't have a fall or a spring. We go directly from it being like 100 degrees to 100 below. And in the summer, we drink like an obscene amount of Slurpees.
But how does your summer? How long does your summer last? Like 2 months?
Couple weeks.
All right, I'm ready to kick this show off. That was a good
Yeah, let's
little
do it.
warm up. Y'all ready to go? No, they have 4.7s conversion rate. Oh, Bob, I miss you. All right, let's go ahead and kick this show off. Oh, where are we? Here we are.
This is Fantasy Intervention. Now here to intervene with your fantasy life, Shane Manila, Jacob Sanderson, and Chase Vernon.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome on to yes, another episode of Fantasy Intervention. We are here. We're here. Well, 2/3 of us are here. Unfortunately, Shane had to miss the event because of some family thing that he's doing with his kids.
Yeah,
Whatever
like
it is.
what is
Like,
with this? Doesn't he understand that there's a whole off season to have a family?
yeah, like go have your family in your off season, okay? Don't do it in season. We have too many important things to talk
Like
about.
I know every NFL player that's valuable is on bye, but I didn't know Shane was.
Those are fighting words, my friend. But yes, that is very true. Like Shane, there are no bye weeks in fantasy football, especially when the bye apocalypse is upon us. So, of course, Jacob had to come into the chat. I'm here for you guys. We're going to answer some questions. We're going to go over some of the Week 7 matchups, of course. And, yeah, big shout out to Fantasy Football Discussion. I know you guys are ready to come in hot and heavy. We're ready to have you. So, let's go ahead and kick this one off with let's talk about some of like these good matchups in this upcoming week. I mean, there are certain players that have very advantageous matchups, such as like, Joe Mixon up against the Ravens. But I want to hop a little bit. I'm sorry. Yeah, Joe Mixon up against the Ravens. But I want to hop a little bit deeper, right? I want to talk about some flex options that, people are kind of on the fence with that we can make them feel secure. We can make them feel good about playing for this upcoming week. And the first one that I want to go on is Uncle Lenny, right? Because Uncle Lenny, he's hit or miss from week to week.
He's a flex option. He's like an RB1.
I know. Well, that's what I love about him, right? Is because he should be an RB1.
He's
And I think
winner
that he is technically an RB1. But when I posted questions in the chat earlier, I probably got 10 of them about Uncle Lenny. Well, Uncle Lenny has an amazing matchup this week, right? I mean, we're talking about the Bears who have been somewhat porous up against running backs so far this year. They've been kind of soft up front. And this is a game that we could actually see Tampa Bay try to not only get ahead, but hold a lead. And instead of doing it through the passing game, because the Bears defense has actually been very good so far this year, they will do it again in the running game, just like they did in week 6 up against the Eagles. Tell me your thoughts on Uncle Lenny real quick. Obviously, you already love him, but give me your thoughts real quick.
Yeah, I'm down with Uncle Lenny. This is kind of a rough week for the wide receivers. Just playing wide receivers against the Bears sucks because their defense is pretty good, and then their offense is just so slow. Like, they just grind the game to a screeching halt. They're so run heavy. They take as much time per play as anybody in the NFL, and it just sort of suffocates the fantasy environment for themselves and their opponents. It's going to be hard, I think, to trust all three of those Bucs wide receivers. I'm sure one of them will pay off. Good luck figuring out which one. I'm not sure that 2 out of 3 even, or certainly not all 3, pay off this week. But Lenny, he's just the gift that keeps on giving. He's going to get 15 carries, I think, for sure. He's going to get some checkdowns. And even if this does become kind of a gross game, as I expect it to, that's not going to be an issue for Lenny. Nobody's grosser than Lenny. He's going to be, the trash man going in there, picking up the trash yards, and he's going to get your 80 on the ground. He's going to get 20 or 30 through the air. He's probably going to punch in a touchdown. It's going to be another free ride for Lenny Fournette for sure.
Dude, I love how you just called him gross, because of course there are some creepy ass uncles out there. So he's gross, creepy Uncle Lenny in a gross, creepy matchup. I absolutely love it. Before we hop into our next guy, let's go ahead and answer a question, because Jamie came in as soon as we got the show started. I want to make sure we get to his question. 12-team, 1 QB PPR. Chase Edmonds, Javonte Williams, Tim Patrick versus
a lot of options.
Allen Robinson versus Tampa Bay. T. Higgins versus Ravens, or Michael Pittman versus San Francisco.
So many.
He's leading Robinson because it's Tampa Bay's run D and weak secondary, but it's not like he's done anything all year. Well, let me tell you real quick what Allen Robinson has done. He put up 219 air yards this past week. It's just unfortunate that Justin Fields couldn't actually connect with him, but he's been out there not as much as another player who we're going to talk about later. I'll go ahead and say it. I'm going to go say it. Darnell Mooney, of course. Darnell Mooney is actually the leading wide receiver for the Chicago Bears over there. But Allen Robinson's still out there. He's still seeing targets, not as much as we'd like to see. But this past week, Justin Fields tried to find him downfield a little bit more often. Hopefully they can connect moving forward. But where do we start with this question?
Well, if you had to guess, do you think Allen Robinson's target share was higher this year or last year?
Ooh, I would think it'd be higher last year, right?
Actually higher this year. He actually has a
really?
24.8% target share this year. He was 24.3 last year. The problem is that since switching to Fields, the Bears, I believe, have averaged 118 pass yards a game. That's just absolutely pathetic. Fields has not been good, and of course, they just haven't passed the ball at all from a volume perspective. So even when Fields has been good, it hasn't helped the wide receivers. And this week, that just has to change. The Tampa Bay secondary is not very good. And more importantly, the Tampa Bay run defense is just a brick wall. Even run-heavy teams generally have not been run-heavy against Tampa. They know what they're in for. They know that that's not an option, and they just have to pass the ball. I can't see how Fields is under 30 attempts this week, just based off of this matchup, based off of the likely game script. Tampa's probably going to beat the doors off this team. And if Fields has to throw 30 passes, that probably means you're going to get 8 targets for Robinson. There's no evidence that Robinson's actually bad. It's just this Bears offense is averaging over 50 yards less passing than the second worst team. It's unbelievable how bad this offense is. So I think Robinson's fine. In this specific one, I would probably still start T. Higgins. I just think that that's a more enticing game. I think it's a fun back and forth game. And Higgins has actually seen a higher target share than Jamar Chase. I'm not saying you'd want to play him over Chase. Chase's ADOT is like twice as large. He has the higher upside every week. But Higgins is still at about 22%. This Bengals team has been in the top 5 in neutral situation pass rate the last 3 weeks after starting really run heavy. They're going to have to chase points against Baltimore. I feel really good about Higgins this week. And yeah, Dustin, it's a very good point.
Dustin Ross in the chat coming in saying, how does Jamie have so many options? I'm about to start CFL players in my flex with these buys. Yeah, you're talking about just a plethora of options over there, Jamie. I'm going with T. Higgins. I know.
I'm sorry, any of these dudes. I'm looking at leagues. I have a legitimate contending dynasty team that I'm starting Deshaun Jackson.
Oh, that's brutal. That is so brutal.
Like, I looked through my lineup, I was like, oh my God, I got to start D-Jacks.
Hey, man, some people just have all the luck, right? No, I'm going T. Higgins with you. I mean, my actual next person when it came to flex guys that you might want to start is every single Ravens wide receiver. I mean, I'm okay running out T. Higgins. I'm okay running out Jamar Chase. I'm okay running out Tyler Boyd. I know you're hate for Tyler Boyd and all, but I still think he has
useless.
I think he still has a decent enough matchup up against the Ravens. It should be a high-scoring game overall. We're going to see a lot of scrambles by Lamar Jackson. We're going to see a lot of opportunity from his wide receivers, in one-on-one coverage. I mean, we're starting to see these wide receivers get healthier with Rashad Bateman coming back. Is there any news on Sammy Watkins that we've seen yet? He's questionable still, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's Sammy Watkins. Like, Sammy Watkins has not only missed one game with a hamstring injury. That's not a thing. When Sammy Watkins gets a hamstring injury, he misses months, if not years, if not decades.
Okay, so we're going to backpedal off of Sammy Watkins. But, I mean, there's just so many options on the Ravens that it's hard to play one guy, but at least that they have options and they're going to have opportunities on the offense. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, and I'm going to go T. Higgins in this selection of guys. Let's hop on one more question real quick, and then we'll get to the rest of some of these guys. They got offered Swift and Deontay Johnson for Calvin Ridley. Should you accept? And anytime that Deontay Swift is in a trade, I'm going to say yes.
Deontay Swift?
I mean, DeAndre Swift. Not Deontay. I meant Deontay. No, I'm just kidding.
You should absolutely accept. I would rather have Swift than Ridley. Well, okay, I don't know if I'd rather. I think Swift and Ridley are comparable. You could definitely argue that one either way. And Deontay is probably like 85 to 90% as good as Ridley. I think he's getting a million targets. There's no juju.
I don't like Ridley either. So I mean,
I think it's like a very absolute most favorable view of Ridley. It's a minor downgrade to Swift and a minor downgrade to Deontay, and you're getting two players. So I think absolutely you accept.
Yeah, I have Swift as the best player in this trade, so I'm taking it and running as fast as I can. All right, so let's go ahead and hop onto a few more of these players, and then we have questions from Ben. We have questions from Hunter. We have questions from Husker, just kidding, of course. And so let's go ahead and hop on to a couple more of these flex option guys. Yeah, I know he's Husker on the show. All right, let's go with Deontay Harris over there.
This one is Deontay?
Yeah, for the Saints. I mean, we could say Marquez Callaway. That's probably a better guy to say.
Has back, though, too.
Oh, he is back for this week. I forgot about that. So let's go ahead and scratch Deontay Harris, and let's go with Marquez Callaway, because I think that Marquez Callaway has value regardless. It should be a high-scoring game in what we expect Jameis Winston to be throwing the ball a ton. Now, if Jameis Winston ends up checking down to Alvin Kamara, which he hasn't done a lot yet, but I expect that to happen in tremendous favors, it should end up bringing the safeties up, which should allow for some big plays, and that's what Marquez Callaway specializes in. Do you hate Marquez Callaway? Do you like Marquez Callaway? Is he a lock for you for a flex spot if he's in your lot or if he's on your bench?
Dude, he better be good, because I mean, that I have Callaway on a lot of dynasty teams, and usually I don't try to put him in the lineup. But you talked about it, man. It's the bipocalypse. It's the Kobayashi Maru. There's no options. So whoever's on the bench, like this is like a baseball extra innings game where it's inning 17 and you go to the bullpen. You say, who's left? Who hasn't pitched yet? Okay, you get in the game. Get in the game. So I'm emptying the bullpen. Marquez Callaway is probably going to be on like 7 of my starting lineups this week. Same with Quez Watkins. That's like the toss up that I have on all of these teams where I'm looking at the bench and I go, oh, I got these 2 guys with Quez in their name. Which one am I going to start? I think Callaway's in a good spot. He had a really, really necessary big game against Washington, where he was starting to rotate in and out of the field. They were starting to just churn through wide receivers, versus early in the season when he was being treated as the clear one. He came out, he had a really nice game. He had 85 yards, 2 touchdowns. I know one of them was on a Hail Mary, but I mean, he still made an exceptional play on the Hail Mary. So yeah, I don't think we should discredit that. He made a great play, and coaches will remember that. And he caught another touchdown as well. So I think that was really important for him to stake a claim to still be that lead receiver when Traquan is back this week, and then still remain, potentially in the number 2 role when Michael Thomas comes back within the next couple of weeks. I think Callaway's in a great spot against Seattle. Seattle is definitely beatable deep. I know they looked good on Sunday night as a defense, but that's what happens when you play Ben Roethlisberger. You look good. I expect that Jameis is going to be able to take advantage down the field this week.
Yeah, no, and I'm excited for it. Let's go ahead and hop on one more player that just got traded last week, and I don't know how they would have handled this. What if, hypothetically, what if Zach Ertz ended up playing in, the Thursday matchup, then he got traded on Friday, and then they rolled him out on Sunday? Would he have gotten double points?
You should.
He should have gotten double points.
Quadruple points in tight end premium leagues.
Yeah, I know, right? Jesus. So, he is in this week over there for Arizona. He's likely to play. And we saw how the the Arizona Cardinals utilized Max Williams so far this season, up until he got hurt. I mean, he was seeing 7 targets, 6 targets. I think he even saw 5 targets in another game. This is something where Zach Ertz showed that he still has some stuff left in the gas tank. I mean, sure, he's not the same Zach Ertz that we saw 5 years ago, but he's also not a scrub. He goes over there to an offense that now, God, good luck trying to figure out who's going to get the targets. I mean, this is just going to be a shit show from week to week, but Kyler Murray has gotten better at identifying the matchups, right? And we've seen it, like we saw, AJ Green and Christian Kirk go off one week. We saw DeAndre Hopkins and Christian Kirk go off one week. We saw DeAndre Hopkins and I think Rondale Moore go off one week. We saw Rondale Moore and Max Williams go off one week. So, I mean, it's been just like him being able to identify the people that are open versus the matchup. Mm-hmm. And it's something as to where now, like, Zach Ertz has a great matchup against the Houston Texans. Do you think Zach Ertz, they take the old car for a spin, right? They take it for a joyride, kick the tires, see what they have in Zach Ertz? Do you think they're going to ease him to the offense? Because I, for one, think that they're going to put him right in and he could end up seeing a touchdown. They're going to show off their new toy to the rest of the league.
Yeah, I mean, he traveled with the team to Cleveland. He wanted to get acquainted with his teammates. He wanted to get acquainted with the playbook as quickly as possible. I'm not sure he'll see whatever his maximum route percentage is this week, but I think he'll see a lot. Max Williams ran about 56% of the routes. I expect Ertz, maybe not this week, but longer term, to creep up towards 70, 80%, I think. I just don't imagine that they brought him in to only run half the routes. And this offense is just so easy for a guy like Ertz, who maybe is a little bit limited athletically. Just, you have Hopkins, who's, I know his target share is lower, but if you look at his PFF grid, if you just simply watch him play, he hasn't lost a step. He's still every bit as good. It's just that he's going to always command the brunt of the defensive attention. Then you have Christian Kirk being able to stretch the team deep. You have Rondale being able to work underneath. He has so much space to operate in. You have a guy in AJ Green who, I mean, he's averaging 0.46 yards per route run against man coverage. Like, he's not even actually good, but he's producing all of this great fantasy value because you have all of these other options that are sucking coverage away, and he's just open a lot. And I think Zach Ertz is going to benefit from that same thing, where if you can just be a reliable, smart target that can find holes in zone defenses, Hopkins is going to draw defenders away from you. Kirk is going to draw defenders away from you. Rondale is going to draw defenders away from you. And Ertz just kind of has to be there. And he just has to be intelligent, and he has to catch the ball, and he's going to produce just like Green.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. I mean, we talked about the matchups, right? And all it took was AJ Green to face up against, what's his name, David Long, I believe, over there for the Rams. David Long's like 5'9". So all of a sudden, Kyler Murray noticed that matchup right off the bat. He's like one-on-one coverage, and you're going to run a fade route. Yeah, I'm going to AJ Green, who not only can still win with the jump ball, but he can still get a little bit of separation.
He can still be the linebacker.
Yeah. And Hunter Long is nothing better than that. So, I mean, it's something as for Zach Ertz. I think that you can roll him out this week, and feel great about it. But the biggest thing about Zach Ertz, you know what he can get you?
TDs.
Oh, he can get you TDs. He can also get you one of these, baby.
Oh, I see.
Oh, yes. He can get you one of these. The belt, the championship belt. You can bring this home, sucker. If you guys go out and get Zach Ertz, and you guys can actually find this belt over there, trophysmack.com. Once again, that's trophysmack.com. Use promo code CIRCLE when you guys go in, and you will actually get a free ring. Championship ring with the purchase of a title belt or a trophy. This thing's heavy as shit, by the way. Did I tell you how heavy this thing is?
How heavy?
It's heavy. Like, I could hit, like,
it's
probably
heavy.
Yeah, like, I could probably hit a little kid over the back of the head with this thing, and it would probably knock him out. Like, so.
Wow,
anyways, parents, if you don't need it would smash faces. It would be amazing. Go to trophysmack.com, guys. Go check out their trophies and their belts. Use promo code CIRCLE. So, let's hop on a few of these questions, and then we'll hop on to our next segment. We have, where were we? Right here? Yeah, that was it, right?
Yeah. Man, that's the worst, man. You're going from Najee Harris to one of these jabrones. I would start Daryl Williams James Conner saw his best. Actually, wait, doesn't Arizona have like the cakiest matchup on earth? Don't they have Houston?
Jacob, we have a podcast, okay? They're not going to know what you're saying on the podcast.
Right. Okay.
So Najee Harris on bye.
Najee Harris is on bye. Should I start Daryl Williams or James Conner? Man, you're gonna hate listening back on last week's show then, because I guarantee Shane and I didn't do that once. Anyway, I would normally start Daryl just because he has like the much better role. He actually plays over 70% of the snaps versus Conner. I know he had his biggest role of the year last week, but I'm not sure that's here to stick. He's usually on the short end of that timeshare, but they're playing the Houston Texans. James Conner comes into the game when they're ahead by a lot. He plays more snaps, and of course, he gets all of the goal line touches. They're going to score so many flipping touchdowns on Houston. It's just unimaginable that Conner does not get one or even two or even three of those. So I think you can start James Conner with confidence this week if you could ever start James Conner with confidence.
Yeah, this is probably the 1 week that you could do it. With plus Chase Edmonds is not doing too hot right now. He's dealing with a few injuries. Man, for me though, like going away from the Chiefs' high-scoring offense and what could be a shootout up against the Titans. The Titans' defensive line is not great. They leave a lot of holes. Their dose score is not great for the dump-off containment efficiency score. I'm really thinking that Darrell Williams could actually be the go-to here just because James Conner scares me, man. Like, you don't know when you're going to end up with just 40 yards and no touchdown. If he doesn't get you a touchdown, there's nothing there. Me,
actually. You've convinced me. Okay, I would go Daryl, too. He had a good role. I just can't, like, wrap my head around Darrell Williams being a bell cow because I think he's totally ass, but the Chiefs just let him play for whatever reason.
Yeah, I'm like, I understand where you're coming from with James Conner, and I don't disagree with that. But if you don't get it, you're screwed. With Darrell Williams, I think that you can still have a decent week with the same upside that you could see from James Conner. All right, so we're going to hop over to Drake or Hardman PPR. Let me give you a little bit of information, okay? Kenyon Drake barely played last week. He played 11 snaps. He got 6 touches on those 11 snaps. He came in, and he ended up on an out route, right? Playing out of the backfield. And he got matched up against A.J. Johnson. If you don't know who A.J. Johnson is, it's probably
he's
because
even slower than Darrell Williams.
4.79 40, right? He was an undrafted free agent out of, I don't even remember where it was, back in 2015. Like, this guy has been a career backup. It took me forever to dig up information on him because nobody knows who he is. Because on some sites, he's registered as Anthony Johnson, I think, or whatever, Alexander Johnson, whatever his first name is. On other sites, it's A.J. Johnson because nobody knows who the hell this guy is because he doesn't matter. Now, he's still in the game. Both of the middle linebackers over there for Denver have been hurt, but Drake ends up going against him and burns a guy who doesn't even belong in the NFL. Cool, that happened. Then he ends up going in for a second touchdown where there was one defensive lineman that got a hand on his shoulder, and that was it. Like, he reached out and smacked him on the shoulder. That's all he got touched because the offensive line created this massive hole out of nowhere because Denver thought that they would be passing. That's not going to be the case again, okay? Kenyon Drake is not a thing. He has played the same amount of snaps that he played before. It wasn't being in Gruden's doghouse. He just got lucky on the snaps that he played. If he ends up seeing a little bit of a reward, right? Maybe he sees an increase in 5 snaps. That's still not enough. That's still not enough. And I know that Hardman fumbled last week, but Hardman has been showing more and more that he's involved in this offense. And up against the Titans, which I just talked about, it should be a shootout. I mean, we should see Hardman actually get some valuable touches in this one. I'm going Hardman on this.
Yeah, it's absolutely Mecole Hardman. Drake he's not even a part-time player. He's a maybe he won't even play player. I mean, Jalen Richard is getting as many snaps as Kenyon Drake's getting. Like, his role is bizarre. He doesn't play the pass down snaps anymore. Now that Richard's back, he plays those, and even Jacobs plays more pass down snaps actually than Drake. Drake just comes in basically whenever Jacobs needs a breather. So it's like 10 snaps a game. I don't understand why they paid $11 million and then only use him 10 snaps a game. It doesn't make any sense, but that's the reality we live in.
Well, we have a follow-up question from Hunter, right? And this is more likely to get traded, Marlon Mack or Ronald Jones. Now,
Marlon Mack.
I wouldn't even think that Ronald Jones was going to get traded, right? Until Bruce Arians came out today and laughed and said, "There's no way we're trading Ronald Jones." Now that makes me think that they're going to trade Ronald Jones because you never know what to trust with Bruce Arians. I normally have like the 180 thinking, "Oh shit, they're about to trade Ronald Jones." He just said, "There's no way they're trading him. He's gone. He's gone, man." I mean, Marlon Mack is something that I've been hoping is going to get traded. I just don't know if anybody's going to offer the Colts enough, like that the Colts want to see, where they wouldn't just hold on to him.
Like it's got to be like, I can't imagine they need more than like a 5th round pick.
Well, he's scheduled to become a free agent, right? This was just a 1-year deal that they did with him, correct?
Yeah.
I mean, if they just want him to have for insurance, I mean, is a 5th round pick really worth them giving up a guy when they have the salary cap space? Like, why would they get rid of him?
I think just because they aren't very good. Like, that's the biggest difference to me is in terms of insurance. Like, I think that Rojo is worth a lot more as insurance for Tampa, just because Tampa Bay has Super Bowl aspirations. You know, if Fournette goes down, they're not going to have Giovanni Bernard as an every down back. I mean, get out of here.
Keyshawn Vaughn's season, bro.
Yeah, and Bruce Arians would rather castrate himself with a rusty wrench than play Keyshawn Vaughn meaningful snaps in the playoffs.
Oh, so that's what you're saying. He was probably laughing. He wasn't laughing at the thought of trading Ronald Jones.
He didn't want to play Keyshawn Vaughn.
Playing Keyshawn Vaughn. That makes so much more sense.
Right. So it's like they're in just so much of a better spot, right? If Fournette goes down, and he's got a lot of tread on the tires, he could definitely get injured. He's been injured, I think, pretty much every season he's played in the league, except for one. You know, then you go down to like a Rojo Bernard committee, and they're totally fine. Take away Rojo, and they just have running backs who can't run the ball. You know, Indy, it doesn't really have that problem. Like they're not going anywhere fast. So I think that would be a difference. And the other difference too would be the compensatory pick structure. I'm not I'm not an expert on how all of that works, but Rojo was a 2nd round draft pick of them with an expiring rookie deal. I'm pretty sure he would have a higher compensatory pick value than Marlon Mack coming off of a tiny little $2 million vet signing. So essentially if you trade a guy, then you don't get the compensatory pick. And so it only makes sense to trade someone for a higher pick than you would get in the compensatory formula, unless you desperately want the cap savings. But I don't think that Tampa is worried about the cap. They're worried about a Super Bowl. And so I just don't think it makes sense to do it from that perspective either.
So just a little bit of insight, for elementary or rudimentary, compensatory picks. Essentially, your guy has to play a certain amount of snaps, right? And then if he ends up leaving, he has to go to a new team and play a certain amount of snaps. And that's a big part as to where they value those players. It also has to do with the salary cap that the next team signs him to and how much, value he's creating for that new team as well. So, I mean, he's obviously neither one are playing a ton of snaps right now. So that's going to hurt their value regardless. It's probably going to knock them both down to at least a 5th round pick, minimum or max 5th round pick. And then, if they end up going out and showing out for their team, that's the only way they could actually retain the value towards it. Most likely, both are going to be 5th round or later, though, at this point. All right, so what's up, Husker? Once again, we have Carr or Matt Ryan, and then we're going to hop into our first segment. I see you, David. I know you have questions. Hunter, you have more questions. Husker, I see yours, but we're going to answer this question, and then we're going to end up hopping onto our next segment. Then we'll hop back into the questions here in a second. All right, Carr or Matt Ryan. This one's a little bit iffy for me because I actually went and picked up the Dolphins defense just because Matt Ryan is so turnover prone, and he gives you defenses opportunities to get picks. But I mean, David Carr has a decent matchup against the Eagles. I think that the threshold for me is where you're going to see the most amount of attempts come from. And I think that you're going to see most likely Carr probably outpass Matt Ryan. Do you disagree or agree on that one?
I would go Ryan very mildly. This Dolphins secondary has been really bad. They're also very injured. But I think both of these guys are actually pretty solid plays. And in fact, these are my 2 quarterbacks in my home dynasty league. And I expect them both to potentially be QB1s this week, especially with all the guys on bye. So I don't really have a strong leaning here. I'd probably go Ryan just by a smidge. And a lot of that's just due to how horrendous the Eagles are at run D. And I could see a scenario where they ride Jacobs a little bit more. Whereas I think with the Falcons, I mean, their own defense is so abysmal that I think they'll have no choice but to pass in this game, in every game.
Okay, I'll take it. I can roll with that one. All right. So let's go hop into our next segment where we actually talk about guys outside the top 20 for the running back and wide receiver position. Meanwhile, outside of the top 15 for the quarterback and the tight end position that we think that have a chance to finish inside the top 12 for their position and why. That was a mouthful. All right, I'm going to go ahead and kick this one off, and I'm going to go with Jameis Winston. The most passing attempts he's seen so far this season is 30, but I think that changes this week. The Saints have a matchup up against the Seahawks who, they're trying to run the ball more. They're trying to get more ground and pound because obviously Russ Wilson's out, but this team always has a chance to explode. Meanwhile, you really can't run on the Saints, so they're going to be forced to pass. If they end up going up and this becomes a shootout, Jameis Winston's going to have to pass in order to keep up. The Saints, they don't have the same weapons that the Seahawks have, so if it becomes a shootout, I think that the Seahawks have a better opportunity of going up. Jameis Winston is always good for 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, 5 touchdowns, as we've seen so far this season. I'm going to go with Jameis Winston to finish inside the top 12 this week.
I definitely like the Jameis Winston call. Look, I went in there and I looked at quarterback and I was thinking about all these guys, like the two we just talked about, like Carr and Ryan. I was like, oh man, like there's got to be a lot of these options with good matchups. I forgot that half the league's on bye, and so all of these guys that are normally living in this mid-range QB2 are now QB1s, and so I'm picking Justin Fields, who I just said is averaging 118 pass yards a game, and I'm doing that for a couple of reasons. First and foremost is the dearth of other options. And then the second reason is what I already talked about. Tampa's going to force them to pass. So I just don't think that they're going to have the opportunity to run the ball 40 times in this game. They won't be able to do it efficiently, and they'll just get beat by like 28 points if they do that. I think that if he has to pass more, especially against the secondary, he can at least be somewhat efficient-ish. We've seen signs of efficiency from Justin Fields at certain moments. And then the other thing is that he finally actually started running the ball last week. He had 8 rush attempts for 43 yards. That's why people were into Justin Fields as a potential QB1 preseason, was because of his rushing ability. I don't think anyone expected him to come in and be an outstanding passer right away this year. We would never expect that out of a rookie quarterback, especially not Fields in that situation. So if he is able to contribute 40, 50 yards on the ground and a touchdown on the ground, now we're cooking with gas. Now we're up to 10 points, and now we only has to get, maybe 200 yards passing and a touchdown to get into that QB1 category. And that's where I'm hoping to try and cultivate here.
Yeah, I can understand that 100%. It's definitely tough. I mean, I'm sitting here and I'm looking at like Case Keenum.
I considered Case Keenum. I considered Case Keenum.
Jared Goff in a revenge game, maybe. I mean, Jared Goff's revenge game. I don't know who he's going to throw to, but it could be a Jared Goff revenge game. I mean,
it's so bad.
I don't even know what to say. It's tough. It's definitely not the best situation that you're hoping for, but yeah, I could see Justin Fields actually breaking that top 12 opportunity if he can get some legs underneath him and start running the ball a little more often. All right, let's go ahead and hop on to see David's question. He was offered Chris Carson and Alex Collins for CMC. He'd be giving up CMC.
No.
What are the thoughts?
No.
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
Is this another drop Saquon Barkley tweet?
No, like,
how crazy did Twitter go, by the way, from that whole thing that happened? Like where the guy wrote
the guy was a fucking idiot.
Yeah, do not drop Saquon Barkley. At least trade him because he still has trade value. Like, go get somebody else. Like, if you don't like him, don't go drop him. Go trade. The dude was an idiot, but he got a shit ton of clicks for what he did. So he's probably loving life today.
Drop him.
God, man.
He knows what he did. No, don't do this. Like Alex Collins, Chris Carson, like these guys, is super replaceable production. Like you can find this level of RB2 on the waiver wire every second week. These guys aren't meaningfully different than Daryl Williams. These guys aren't meaningfully different than James Conner. I understand that it's hard riding zeros at a CMC, and you look at Chris Carson or Alex Collins that it's a startable running back, but you can find startable running backs like for cheaper. Heck, like go grab J.D. McKissick. Antonio Gibson is probably going to be put on IR at some point this year. Maybe, if not this week, at some point. With that, he's still playing with a fractured shin. Like there's so many other options that you can go to. And then when CMC comes back, like maybe he never does come back, or at least maybe he never comes back fully to CMC that you drafted. But the ceiling potential of CMC just so far surpasses whatever you're going to get out of Chris Carson and Alex Collins. It's just a no-brainer. You got to hold CMC. You have to at least play for that upside.
And Alex Collins might not even play this week, but I mean, you don't only got to take into account that you're going to get rid of CMC. You're also going to have to drop another player, so you might as well add CMC and somebody else in order to make this work. Maybe you have an open roster spot, but no, I mean, like Alex Collins might not play this week, so you might be left having to pick up what's his name, Rashad Penny, or who knows? Like who?
All of a sudden, now you have 3 roster spots on essentially one team's running back. It's a mess. I talked about this when I was on the show with Rich. It was just how you approach trading in these situations where you're stuck on this asset that's really disappointing or that's injured, and you really need to find a way to trade up. Like the depth pieces are always going to be more replaceable than these studs. So if you have CMC. I mean, my recommendation is to hold. But let's say you're a team, you have CMC and you're 1-5, right? Like you can't afford to wait 2 more weeks for CMC to come back because you have other bye week issues. Like maybe Najee Harris is your other running back, or someone else that's CEH or whatever. Someone else that you can't play this week. You're really stuck. You need to win. Like you got to use CMC with another player on your team. Maybe it's a player on bye. Maybe it's just a depth piece. Maybe it's your wide receiver 3, whoever it is. Combine those two and then try to get someone that's closer to CMC's level, so that you don't like lose that ceiling case. Take CMC, add a player, and go after like Dalvin Cook, or I guess that he's on bye, so maybe that's not the best example. Alvin Kamara, whatever. But like you have to be able to replicate CMC's ceiling somehow, because otherwise, like you're just treading water. Even if it gets you through this week, like now what? You're 2-5, and your team is just worse. You don't have the ceiling. Like it's not just about. You're not in a guillotine league, right? You have to actually have a team that can win when you get to the playoffs. And if you trade CMC for an RB2, you're never going to be able to recoup that value at any point.
No, that's a great point. That's a really great point because you're literally just making your team worse than what it was versus still seeing the upside or the potential upside. And honestly, you probably wouldn't be looking to make this trade if you had a winning record at this point. All right, we'll go with one more, and then we'll hop on to the next one. We're going to go with Hunters. I picked up Carr and then realized I have Drake in the flex.
Well,
and
you shouldn't have Drake in the flex.
Should I drop Marlon Mack and pick up Robinson or Hardman?
Yeah.
Wait, which Robinson?
DeMarcus, I'm thinking.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
You don't need to ever have DeMarcus Robinson. Don't you worry about that. But you can definitely pick up Hardman for sure, and you should probably drop Kenyon Drake for Nicole Hardman. I would actually rather have Marlon Mack and hope that he's traded than Kenyon Drake. Kenyon Drake will not be traded because no team is going to want to eat $5.5 million of Kenyon Drake. So Kenyon Drake will be remaining where he is, and that makes him an undesirable asset. And the thing is, he doesn't even have contingent value because we already saw Josh Jacobs get injured, and when he was injured, Kenyon Drake was useless. If Jonathan Taylor goes down, at least Marlon Mack is going to be startable. Kenyon Drake isn't startable no matter what. Drop Drake.
True story. All right, one more, and then we'll hop into it because I want to answer Huskers because this one looks really bad. All right. He says, Husker comes in the chat says, yes, this is bad. Geno Smith or Zach Wilson this week? Under no circumstances will I ever give you permission to play Zach Wilson up against the Patriots, at least outside of like the first 2 years. Like rookie year quarterbacks up against Bill Belichick. We already saw. We already saw.
Mills?
Oh, Davis Mills was actually good. Davis Mills got lucky. Davis Mills got lucky as hell on one throw to a receiver that doesn't even have a name. Zach Wilson.
Chris Moore.
Yeah, Chris Moore. Jesus. Oh, man. Geno Smith, meanwhile, sucked last week. All they did was try and run the ball. Did you see the one post by somebody? I don't remember who it was, but it said, the Seahawks attempt to build up a running back room so that they can have a drive like this, which only happens for them like once a year. And it was literally just run.
Oh, Pete Carroll. I put out a tweet. Like Pete Carroll feels so unburdened by he feels unshackled without Russell Wilson. Like he probably hates so much that he has a good quarterback and then he has to pass the ball because he feels like it's necessary to let his good quarterback throw. Like he must be so happy to have a shitty quarterback so that there's just no one is going to be mad at him for running the ball on every single play. Like all the fans are finally like, yeah, okay, this guy sucks. You got to hand it off. Like
meanwhile, Tyler Lockett's like, damn it. God damn it.
Yeah, I mean, also, you mentioned Chris Moore. Can we talk about the Texans for a second? What is happening? So they traded a 5th-round pick for Anthony Miller and then cut him 3 weeks later. They signed Andre Roberts for $2.5 million, cut him 6 weeks later. Why do they keep spending draft picks and money on wide receivers and then immediately cutting them? None of them are good. Like, what are they doing? It's so funny. Also, Geno Smith, I guess, is the one you start. But I mean, like, my God, I don't want to recommend either of these guys. I've gone back and forth 6 times where I'm like, okay, well, you can't play Geno. You got to play. No, you can't play Zach. You got to play. No, you can't play Geno. You got to. I don't want to do it.
Hey, the bright spot is for
You
Geno.
considered eating the 0.
just eat the 0.
If this was Scott Fishbowl, I would actually advise eating the 0. I would project both these guys to have negative points in the Scott Fishbowl.
They probably would. Zach Wilson definitely would. I mean, he put up negative 17 in the Scott Fishbowl for that week. I know because I have Zach Wilson. I don't start him ever. I just have him so nobody else can take him. And just in case he finds fire at one point, with Elijah Moore. But no, I mean, oh man, no, Geno Smith. Like, you got to hope that the Seahawks can't run on the Saints, which is something that the Saints have done pretty good at.
Although they will try.
They will try, and they will fail for the first 2 quarters, and then Geno Smith will have to throw the ball, and he'll probably put up the same stat line that he put up when he came in at halftime of the game, 2 weeks ago. But yeah, I'm going to go Geno Smith in this one. All right, so let's hop on. I still see questions. We have some coming in from Jay. Hunter has some more questions, Chris.
And you're going to kill me. This is such a good matchup for Lattimore. Like, Metcalf is the exact kind of wide receiver that Lattimore is actually good against.
Yes, he is. He is. Yeah, he loves those big receivers. That's why Mike Evans.
I know.
For some
it's
weird
all
reason.
I can see is Mike Evans in a 0 for 0.
Dude, it's every time, man. It's crazy. All right, so let's go ahead and hop on to this next section, and that's running backs outside the top 20 ranked by ESPN that we think will finish into the top 12. And I really, I'm not kidding you, I really wanted to go David Johnson this. I mean, we talk about, it's so gross. It's so gross.
He had a good week 2 weeks ago, and then this week he fumbled and didn't play, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's the situation. I mean, the Cardinals actually give up the most explosive plays on the running game to the running back position, although David Johnson is not explosive anymore. He's the most explosive running back.
He's probably the most explosive running back they have.
Yeah. And the Arizona Cardinals, although they've only given up 7.8 yards in the air, they've only played 8 pass-catching running backs, and really they've only been credited for 7 of them, just because they haven't been good. So they're giving up a good amount of points to the pass-catching running backs, although they haven't played very many good ones. So if David Johnson can get one explosive run and then get 8 points or 10 points, let's just say, in the pass catching game, we could see a 20-point game from David Johnson this week. So that's why I wanted to pick David Johnson, but I didn't go there. I did not go there. I decided to go with A.J. Dillon. A.J. Dillon has proved that he can be a pass catching option. His snaps have been going up. His opportunities have been going up. And Washington has been bad. They are not just bad on the ground. They're actually really bad in the DOE score, the dump off containment efficiency score. We're looking at them giving up 13.3 fantasy points to the position, which is absolutely horrendous. They've faced some good running backs. So they faced 9 pass-catching running backs. However, those pass-catching running backs have scored a 10.5, which essentially means that they're well above average in the pass-catching running backs that they faced. But still, 13.3 points is a lot to give up in the air to pass-catching running backs. And that's not to all the running backs they face. Those are just the pass catchers. So I'm sitting there and I'm looking at an opportunity if A.J. Dillon can get in one-on-one with William Jackson because they go to zone, right? William Jackson, being a smaller dude, is going to get bowled over by A.J. Dillon. Landon Collins isn't the best in coverage, so maybe he gets one-on-one in coverage with Landon Collins in man-to-man on the outside, and all of a sudden A.J. Dillon can burn him or at least break a tackle. Cam Curl, the linebackers are brutal. Like John Bostic's lost for the season. Yeah. Cole Holcomb can't cover anybody, which is why he's racking up points in tackle leagues for IDP, because he can't cover anybody. He's tackling them after he makes the tackle, or after he allows him to make the catch, he makes the tackle. So I'm going to go with A.J. Dillon just in hopes that he sees volume this week in what could be a Green Bay blowout, because Taylor Heinicke just can't keep up with anybody.
Yeah, this pick is so disgusting. it's been a yo-yo for this player. He's had weeks where he looked like he was in a good role. Then he looked like he didn't even play. Couple weeks, he had a huge game, and then he followed it up with an absolute steaming turd in jolly old England this week. But I am putting my faith in the dose score. For seemingly a decade now, the Atlanta Falcons have been one of the worst teams in the league at covering pass-catching running backs. They are once again 30th in the dose score this year. Myles Gaskin has seen 16 targets the last 2 weeks. My hope is he doesn't drop all of them like he did this past week. And Miami seemingly varies their personnel based on the matchup. They made it a point to get Gaskin involved against Tampa, which is another team that gives up a lot of points to pass-catching running backs. So I'm going to go ahead and trust the Miami coaching staff to put their trust back into Myles Gaskin this week. And I'm going to say that he squeezes his way into the top 12 with 6 or 7 catches somehow.
Yeah, I actually almost picked Myles Gaskin just because of the dose score. I mean, Atlanta's bad. And Atlanta's bad. So there's always different reasons why a team could be bad up against pass catching running backs, right? Like you have, their secondary is really, really good, so they have to dump it off. Or you have, hey, they blitz, and so the quarterback doesn't have time, and the wide receivers aren't good enough to get open, so they have to dump it off. Or you have, hey, this team is always losing, so they're always in, a pass first, type schedule in the second half, so they have to pass the ball, so they see tons of volume, and part of that volume they dump it off. There's literally like 4 or 5 different metrics that I go by to try and tell why a team will pass it off, and hopefully that ends up leading me to an assumption of why they could do it. And the reality is like the Atlanta Falcons are just really bad at covering running backs or anybody, and they're really bad when it comes to actually shutting them down. I mean, I'm sitting here right here looking at it. They're allowing 6 receptions per game to the running back for 44 yards. I mean, that's 8 yards per reception. Pretty good. Not a ton of touchdowns, but I mean, just that alone is 10.4 points to the running back position. If you include the touchdowns, you're talking about 11.6 points allowed to the pass catching running backs. They've only played 9, and those pass catching running backs have been subpar. They've scored 8.8. I like Myles Gaskin as long as he can see it, but the reason why I didn't go with Myles Gaskin was because of the fact that we don't know how they're going to deploy him. I mean, he did have 1 drop last week, but 2 of the 6 targets weren't accurate. He only had 3 catches is what it turned out to be. If he had all 6, it would have been a completely different week for him, and we probably wouldn't even be bringing it up. Like, he would still be a full, flex go this upcoming week. So it's tough. I like your pick. I think that it's definitely a possibility that he could finish in the top 12. We just have to see how he's utilized.
By the way, I was digging up stats on the Houston Texans running backs. Phillip Lindsay is turning in one of the stone worst seasons any running back has ever turned in human history. It took until week 5, I believe, for him to register his first yard created. I checked after weeks 4, and he was at 0 yards created per touch, which is impossible. He only has 60 attempts, and he's at negative 75 rush yards over expectation. So on average, when he gets the ball, he creates less than a yard, or he creates more than a negative yard rushing over expectation. So wherever his rush should end, he subtracts more than a yard from that, which is so bad, which is impossible to do. He has an 18% juke rate, so he only evades 18% of his tackles, and his yards per carry is 2.2.
Dude, okay, so this, you just blew my mind. This could be worse than his pass catching stats throughout his career. I mean, this could be actually worse because everybody's sitting there and they're talking everybody thinks that the small running backs are automatically pass catchers, and that's not the case. Phillip Lindsay is the prime evident candidate for this.
This, by the way, is with an average of 6.1 defenders in the box. He has 2.2 yards per carry.
So he's not even seeing stacked boxes.
No, he's running on air, and he's just running into his own lineman. He's just really bad.
Oh my God, Phillip Lindsay's so bad at football. I couldn't.
He is 112th in expected points added rushing at negative 14.4. Every time that he touches the ball, he subtracts 0.25 points from his team's expected score.
Dude, what's funny? All right, so real quick, just to deter for a second from the conversation at hand. We started writing for Smack Zone, and the whole point for Smack Zone or TrophySmack.com that we created the Smack Zone was to talk shit to people, right? And I could only imagine you coming up to somebody, right? And somebody trying to insult you, and you'd be like, what? You roster Philip Lindsay. And then you just spit all this shit at them, and they can't say anything. Like, well, you roster Corey Davis. Like, like, what are you going to say to that? Like, you know how you're dumb? Like, because you do all this stuff, and like, you just listed it.
Yeah, it's actually even worse than I thought. I just re-looked. He only has 36 carries. So he has negative 14 expected points on 36 carries. Do you know how hard that is to do? Like every time that he receives a carry, he subtracts about 0.4 points per play. Like they give him the ball and he's like, every time they give him the ball twice, he takes a point off the scoreboard. That's unbelievably atrocious.
I love that. That's amazing.
Dustin in the chat says, how is Lindsay getting paid for that type of production? I'm convinced I could also do that and I would do it for half the price.
Dude, Dustin, you probably do it for a quarter of the price. Phil Lindsay got a pretty cool payday. So
he's getting paid $2 million to subtract points. It's pretty wild.
just run forward before the defensive line gets to you and lay down so you don't get completely crushed. Okay, I can do that, coach. Let's go. All right, so let's go ahead and let's hop into these questions again. Jay needs a flex help for standard scoring league. Allen Robinson, Rashad Bateman, Michael Carter to take a lotto shot on Ramondre Stevenson. Ramondre has the Jets, so that does make a lot of sense, but I do think the Jets are actually good up against covering or up against stopping the running backs. However, Ramondre Stevenson, he actually showed he could catch. He had like 3 catches for 30 yards last week.
Yeah, he was a really good pass catcher in college. Actually, he was one of the most. He was one of the most impressive pass catchers in college in terms of like earning targets per route, in terms of especially creating yards after contact on receptions. Like he graded out really, really well analytically. The issue for him was just that he tested really poorly. But like in terms of his receiving production in college, like he was one of the best in the class actually.
We actually showed some bursts, so I got to owe Frank an apology because I definitely was messing with Frank every time he mentioned Ramondre Stevenson because Frank loves Ramondre. But yeah, I would not go there for your lotto ticket. I don't even see the upside in that. I think that he's just super limited unless something happens to Damien Harris in the game. I don't really see him going off. I think you have to go Allen Robinson in what could be a shootout. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, I don't see the upside or the floor for any of these guys outside of Michael Carter. Yeah. And it's only because New England Patriots.
It's gross.
Well, the Patriots do this bend but don't break. So let your running back go for 4 yards per carry. And then.
Yeah, but how many points are the Jets going to score?
Very little, if not.
Like what? Any. Like are they going to score? Like they're probably going to score 1 touchdown max.
And get like 2 field goals.
So Carter has to score the touchdown. Like Carter's not an explosive player. So like what are the odds that Carter gives you a performance that you regret sitting without scoring a touchdown? And then what are the odds that he scores a touchdown in a game where the Jets might not score a touchdown?
Yeah, I mean, the Patriots are giving up 10.6 yards or points to the pass catching running backs, and that's where Carter could actually hold value. I mean, if he walks out of this with, let's just hypothetically say 5 receptions for 50 yards, which is about what they're allowing, and he gets 30, 40 yards in the rushing, like that's actually a pretty good game for what's considered to be these players. I still want to go with Allen Robinson.
Like he still only sees about 60% of the pass down snaps. Ty Johnson is still kicking around there.
Yeah, but he's averaging what, like 2 or 3 receptions per game. If he could get a little bit of a boost coming off a bye week,
that's possible.
I think that it's possible, which is why I'm creating an argument. Otherwise, I would just say Allen Robinson. Let's move on. No, but I think that Michael Carter could end up eclipsing Allen Robinson's production because Allen Robinson and Justin Fields just haven't clicked. And so if we think that it's going to be a Justin Fields rushing game and he's not going to see a ton of passing opportunities, that's where I'm going to lean Michael Carter.
Yeah.
But I still have to take Allen Robinson. It's just a lot closer than I think that you are to it than I am to go in Michael Carter.
Yeah, I would have Robinson first, and I would actually have Stevens in second. The Jets are dead last in the dose score. And I think Ramondre Stevenson is the leading pass-catching running back on the New England Patriots. I expect him to do a lot of work in the pass game in this one. And as well, he's going to contribute in the run game. And we actually saw him sub in for Damien Harris at the goal line on one occasion. So I think he's definitely drawing a line to score a touchdown. I think he's a really, really good bet to catch 3 or 4 passes. And what I liked is they used him creatively in the passing game. Like he ran that Texas route down the seam for about a 20-yard gain. That wasn't just a dump off. That was really cool to see out of Ramondre Stevenson. The only issue with Ramondre is to truly unlock his potential. He absolutely must improve his pass blocking because he got put in the doghouse whiffing a pass blocking assignment in week 1. And then he had another horrendous pass blocking whiff where he just came up and tried to leak out of the backfield too soon. He missed a blitzer and he got Mac Jones hit big. I thought they were going to sub him out of the game. They left him in, but I think he's on a short leash in that regard, and he's going to keep losing long down distance snaps to Brandon Bolden if he doesn't improve that. And that's a serious problem because I don't think he's going to take, Harris's role, but if he could take, 30% of the early down carries and half the goal line work and get all of the passing role that Bolden gets, like that's a really, really valuable role. That's like James White plus, and that's why I was really into Stevenson this draft season because I think that's an interesting profile and he has that ability. He just needs to stop completely ignoring blitz assignments. Otherwise, they're just never going to trust him out there.
Man, so I just looked up the Jets, right, and the dose score, and I'm like, holy shit,
they're dead last.
They're dead last. They're giving up 15.4 points per game to the pass-catching running backs, right? Not to all the running backs, just to the pass-catching running backs in the air. They've allowed 0 touchdowns to the pass-catching running backs. So these 15.4 points per game are coming because they're allowing 8.22 catches per game, and they're allowing 72 yards.
Right, and do you know how hard that is for a team the team that hasn't won to allow that?
That's
right.
Insane,
like most
right?
of the teams that allow a lot of pass, like it makes sense why Tampa allows so many points to pass catching running backs, right?
Because
they're always ahead, and then they're playing a prevent, and then the team has to dump off to the running back because they're trying
Which
to.
Which is what we saw with Swift, this past week.
Yeah, right, and that makes sense. But the fact that the Jets get blitzed by pass catching running backs, despite like never being ahead, is remarkable.
It's crazy.
Never seen anything like it.
9 yards per reception to the pass catching back. That's crazy. Guys, if y'all want to check out the dose score, it's pretty cool. It's fantasyintervention.com/DOCE. It'll help y'all out with your fantasy matchups. It's mainly made for DFS and for finding guys like the Brandon Bolden type players who only see receptions, but you can still find, cool niches like this where we could actually dive into it and find guys like Ramondre Stevenson who might actually play out. So.
And it's worth noting that James White actually had 6 catches for 45 yards against the Jets in their first matchup. This was something that they exploited. And I really think in this game especially, like they know that Ramondre Stevenson is a more dynamic player than Brandon Bolden. And, this is not really a high leverage game for them. I expect them to win this by a couple of touchdowns, especially if they start pulling away early. There's just no need for them to not give Stevenson more opportunities in those passing situations and let him work through the kinks. Because if he blows a pass blocking assignment when they're up by 2 touchdowns, like who really cares, right? So I could see them letting him work through the kinks a little bit more in this game. I actually think he's a sneaky start. I'm starting Ramondre Stevenson in a couple of leagues, and I'm actually like a little bit excited about it.
That's cool. I like that. That's great information from Jacob. And, we had these conversations about the dose score to kind of open eyes and to help people realize certain things that no other sites really offer. So I'm excited to unroll this, and we have plans to unroll other things over the next 2 seasons that I have coming out. We're just making sure the dose score is something that we want to function off of and operate with moving forward. So let's go ahead and hop on to the next question, and then we'll hit wide receivers, and we'll finish up with tight ends and crush the rest of the questions. All right. I have to drop. Oh, wait, this isn't even a question. Okay. We'll hit this question real quick. Should I trade Terry McLaurin for Deebo Samuel or Deontay Johnson? So, no, first off, Terry McLaurin, I know that he's the wide receiver 20 in the season. However, his points expected, I believe, for the rest of the season is still 14th. He's somebody that, like, all right, you have Taylor Heinicke in there, but once Fitzpatrick comes back, hopefully that plays to Terry McLaurin's strengths, right? Because you have a little pistol pop gun for an arm on Taylor Heinicke, and he hasn't been accurate while targeting Terry McLaurin outside of one insane catch on the sideline. I think that was up against the Chargers. I got to stick with Terry McLaurin. How you feeling?
Yeah, I would go with Terry, but I think all these guys are in a pretty similar tier. Although I would stick with Terry. I just think he's the highest upside player. I think he's the most talented player.
All right. So, Chris, we'll get back to your question here in a little bit. I see another question from Hunter, I believe. Another question from Dustin as well. And Chris, but we'll get back to those in a second. Let's cover these wide receivers outside the top 20 that could finish as a top 12 wide receiver. Do you want to take this one first? Or do you want me to go?
No, I'll go. So we talked about this Philly Raiders game. That's the second highest over-under on the slate, I believe. And while I expect Josh Jacobs to be a large beneficiary of this matchup, we know that these Philly corners have struggled to cover deep. We saw Antonio Brown absolutely shred them on Thursday night in prime time. And Henry Ruggs has been ridiculously efficient. I put out a thread on Ruggs today and why I'm not quite as sold on him as a potential wide receiver one in Dynasty anytime soon, just because he hasn't been drawing the targets. But from a week-to-week perspective, he is drawing a bunch of air yards. He's 9th in the NFL in completed air yards, 13.9 yards per target, which is in one sense totally unsustainable, but it's also extremely impressive. He's playing really good football right now, and he gets the Eagles. It's going to be a great matchup for him. He does not need a whole lot of plays to make a fantasy impact. They absolutely love running that play action post down the field to Henry Ruggs. Philly defense is usually willing to oblige, and I expect Ruggs to have a decent shot at cracking a big one this week against Philly and working his way up into that top 24 wide receiver or maybe even higher.
Yeah, I think Antonio Brown's playing like the same role, right? And he ended up having a great week last week up against the Eagles. I could see that happening. I think that Henry Ruggs every week, like you can never be like, oh no, that's a bad play, because Henry Ruggs can beat anybody on any play. And I'm glad to see that he's actually surfacing as a first round pick and equaling hopefully to the talent. I need to see him a little bit, used more often in order to get to that 11th overall pick. But I like him for this week for sure. I went with Darnell Mooney. Almost for the same reason.
A lot of speed here.
Lots of speed.
You know what? It makes sense though, right? Because it's just so bad at wide receiver that there's not that many options that we can depend on to draw a lot of targets. So you look at it and say, okay, well, who can do a lot with not that many targets, right? It's often these really fast dudes.
I was sitting there and I was thinking about that. I'm like, I don't like any of these possession receivers that are on the board. Because normally I like a guy who can offer me a touchdown, who's going to see red zone opportunities. And I'm like, wait, we have a bunch of offenses who don't score a lot. I mean, the top offenses in the league almost are all 6 of the ones that are on bye. I mean, and there was like, man, there's no real like possession receivers that you can pick up outside the top 20. Like you have to get a big play receiver. And Darnell Mooney, who is the number one receiver on the Bears, is like the perfect one. Mm-hmm. I mean, Tampa Bay is allowing the 3rd most explosive plays in the season. They've allowed 28 explosive plays. That's insane. Meanwhile, Mooney is running the most routes and playing the most, right? He's seen the most targets for the Bears wide receivers. And his conversion rate on targets is the most for anyone over 15 targets for the Bears in the season. Oh, man. He caught 3 of his 5 deep balls so far, and I honestly feel like he could end up doubling that this week. Like, I think that Mooney could come away with 3 balls of over 20-plus yards and probably 2, maybe 3 touchdowns. This is going to be a big week for Mooney, and it's going to be a big week for Justin Fields when it comes to being a make-or-break player in the NFL, and it starts up against a very tough defensive line with a very weak secondary. Yep. That's why I like Mooney. Just throw it up, give Mooney a chance to make plays, and let's see him come home. Let's see him bring it home with 3 touchdowns.
Like, let's just make life easy on Justin Fields. Like all of the tertiary wide receivers in this offense are bags of crap. Like we don't need to do any of this Marquise Goodwin, Damiere Byrd nonsense. How about let's just go max protect and just use Mooney deep and Robinson in the intermediate, and let Herbert or Williams or whatever running back they have leak out of the backfield. Like make it easy on Fields. Use play action, max protect, move the pocket, get him in bootlegs, and not have all these reads. Like he's struggling to go through his reads right now. You see him miss Allen Robinson wide open this last week on what would have been a walk-in touchdown, right? Like why not just create more of those opportunities where Mooney and Robinson just get to beat their guy? Fields has simple throws, gets to operate outside the pocket. Like you can make this a lot easier on a young quarterback than Nagy's done so far. That's for sure.
All right. So we have another question from Chris. It's start 2, DeAndre Hopkins, Terry McLaurin, or Robert Woods.
Hopkins for sure for me. I know the target share hasn't been there, but I still think it's going to perk back up. And I mean, there's just no one on Houston that can cover this guy. And then who's McLaurin playing? Oh, they're playing the Packers, and there's no Jair Alexander. He's still on IR this week. I would go with both of them. Woods, just too many weeks with very low target volume. And even though I have concerns about Hopkins' target volume as well, I know that he's at least a little bit more capable of making those big plays. They're always looking in around the end zone. Woods can disappear a little too much for me right now, and especially in a game against Detroit where they're going to get up in a hurry. And if it doesn't go to Woods early, it might never go to him.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think that if Woods doesn't end up seeing, 4 or 5 targets minimum in the first quarter, first half, like he's done for the game essentially. They're going to run the ball a ton. Sonny Michel's going to get touches. It's going to be a game where they don't want to risk hurting their stars. They're probably going to be up by multiple touchdowns.
If you need a sneaky running back play, Michel might be the one. Like he might have one of those 11 carry for 65 yards and a touchdown all in the fourth quarter kind of games.
I hate that. I hate that so much. I can't find a better running back to start this week other than Daryl Henderson.
Yeah, I mean, he's a smash.
How
insane is his ownership going to be on DraftKings? He's still only 6,600. They refuse to respect him.
Dude, he's going to see 25%.
25%. He was like 6,000 this past week, and he was getting, all of the ownership. I think he was like 22%, and that was with him being $100 more than Kareem Hunt, who was priced as a backup, and he was a starter. So it's going to be like just a disgusting amount of chalk on Henderson, and it's earned chalk. So I don't know. It's going to be a little scary.
Yeah. Oh man,
yeah.
You might just play Sonny Michel as a contrarian play and call it a day.
Oh my god, I don't know.
I hate that.
What are you doing? I think if you're gonna pivot off Henderson, you just play Copp or Woods. Probably Copp.
Yeah. I'm gonna fade Woods. So all right, let's go ahead and hit Hunter's question. Wait. Hunter, why do you do this to us, man?
Trade Eckler or Kamara for Dalvin Cook. I would probably prefer Eckler the most out of all of those. Cook has just been dealing with so many nagging injuries that I just struggle to believe that they're not going to reappear at some point. I still definitely value Dalvin Cook very highly. Don't get me wrong, but I would probably. I don't think Eckler's really been any worse than Dalvin Cook when both are healthy, but Eckler's been healthier. Kamara's role, I think, is materially worse than Dalvin Cook, so I probably would be willing to trade him for Cook.
I agree, but so I was breaking down some game film. Like, I wasn't breaking down game film. I was watching game film on the side while I was trying to get a bunch of stuff done, and I wasn't very focused. But every time I looked over, Kamara was running out in the flat, and he had 2 defenders on him. They kept the safety over top playing the flat, and they kept a linebacker on the inside. So no matter which way Kamara went, he had to have 2 guys close in on him. And it wasn't zone. This was man coverage. I literally rewound the play like 3 or 4 times to look at it, and I'm like, wait, they have 2 defenders in man-to-man on Kamara because they just didn't care.
Because who else is going to beat them?
I know.
It's Marquez Callaway and Kenny Stills. They have Kenny Stills and Chris Hogan playing meaningful snaps on this football team right now.
That's embarrassing. All right. How is Lindsay getting paid? Oh, yeah, that's right. Let's see. For a flex, would Hollywood or Alex Collins be a better option? Hollywood. We don't even know if Collins is going to play this week.
Yeah, I'm not sure Collins is going to play. If he does play, he's going up against a very good run defense in New Orleans, and specifically a run defense that will only have to worry about the run because they can just let Lattimore deal with Metcalf one-on-one and otherwise just play 8 men in the box.
Sorry Hunter Hall comes in after writing this long essay that we tried to go through and read, and we didn't really understand what was happening. So Hunter Hall comes in and says in my best Adam Sandler voice, "So sorry to interrupt."
That's great. Also, I wanted to mention on Hollywood Brown. I've not ever really been like, "What's up, Mike?" I've never been a big Hollywood guy, but I actually think that this is the best possible time to buy Hollywood Brown. He's had this role, like if you look at the first 4 weeks, Sammy Watkins actually out-targeted him. He had 1 more target the first 4 weeks in Hollywood Brown. No one cared because Hollywood had way more air yards. He had more end zone targets. Like despite the raw targets being essentially the same, Hollywood's role was clearly better. Then Bateman comes in and he basically plays the exact same role as Watkins. And he out-targets Brown by 1, which should have shocked nobody because that was very plausible to happen in any given week when it was Watkins and Brown. It just coincided with the week where, they played the Los Angeles Chargers. What do the Chargers do? What's Staley's whole philosophy on defense? It's limiting explosive pass plays, right? And that's what sets Brown apart from Watkins is the ability to draw explosive pass plays down the field. Nobody's getting explosive pass plays against the Los Angeles Chargers this year, really. So I think that it's one of those instances where people have been expecting Bateman to come in and immediately alpha Marquise Brown. That's been a possibility that's out there. And then it just so happens that the first week they play together, Brown has this really down game. But I feel like if Watkins was playing and Bateman was out, the exact same thing would have happened. Like Brown would have probably been limited by a team that's defense is designed to limit a player like him. And they would have seen a similar amount of targets like they always do. So I think Bateman is going to be good. Don't get me wrong. I'm very pro Bateman in the long term. But I don't think that all of a sudden this is Bateman's offense. I think this is Hollywood's is clearly the wide receiver one in this offense for this year. I'm not sure about making proclamations for 2022 and beyond, but I would, if you can use the Bateman return plus a down game to go in and scoop Hollywood as like a back end wide receiver too, I still would absolutely do that.
Yeah, concurred.
You like Hollywood more than me, so I'm sure
I love Hollywood. Yeah. I mean, I already have Hollywood, so I can't trade for him because I already have him everywhere. Like,
true.
It's already a done deal there. All right, so let's hop on to this last little segment that we have, and it is the tight ends. Now, I'm going to forewarn you guys, these tight ends are brutal. We had to pick tight ends outside the top 15 to finish in the top 12, and there was really nobody. And I gave Jacob shit for taking the tight end that he did because I actually wrote an article recently.
Yeah, and you were right.
For waiver wire pickups that you should trash. I wrote it for Trophy Smack, where it's like, what the fuck are you thinking picking up this tight end? But then I looked at the players outside the top 15, and I'm like, okay, I don't really blame you.
Who else are you going to pick?
I'll start out with mine so we can hold some suspense for yours. I went with Ross Dwelly. Up against the Colts. The Colts are really bad up against tight end, and the San Francisco 49ers like to use the tight end. And Ross Dwelly, when he got some opportunities last year, he performed, so I'm going with Ross Dwelly.
It's a tough scene.
It's bad.
Yeah, like if anyone wants to check what we're going through, just go over to the ESPN ranks and look outside the top 15 at tight end. Like it's
just name them off. Name them off.
Oh,
do you have it up?
Here, I can get it up in like 1 second. Say something funny.
Something funny. All right, I got it right here.
Okay. No. All right. Here they are. Oh, you already have it?
Yeah.
Okay. Name them off. Rattle them off. All
right. Mo Alley Cox up against San Francisco. No. Gerald Everett up against New Orleans. No. Evan Ingram up against Carolina. No, but we'll talk about that in a second. CJ Uzomah up against Baltimore. That one was okay, but no. Baltimore's been bad up against tight ends, but they played some elite tight ends over the first 4 weeks, so it kind of skewed their data, and then they shut down TJ Hawkinson, so I don't really like that. Jonnu Smith up against the Jets? No. Ross Dwelly up against the Colts?
Jonnu Smith up against Bill Belichick. He's ran 15 routes in 2 weeks. Like, we got to give it up on Jonnu Smith, who's basically Lee Smith at this point.
All right, Anthony Firkser up against Kansas City. That one was also somewhat interesting, but no. And Njoku up against Denver? No. Austin Hooper against Denver? No. Tom Tremble up against the Giants? No. Like, it was bad. It was bad, dude. It was bad. I mean, I almost picked Ian Thomas just because he's had 2 receptions for 40 yards over 2 weeks. He's had 2 20-yard receptions or something. It's been bad.
I mean, think about all these tight ends that are off this week, right? Like, you got both the Dallas tight ends are off. And I mean, frankly, I would start Jarwin over half of these dudes. You got Dawson Knox, he's off this week. You got Jared Cooks, obviously. I mean, all these guys. Dan Arnold, I would kill to play Dan Arnold this week. I would love to play Dan Arnold this week. But I can't play any of those guys. I've got to play Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram, the problem with Evan Ingram is that he's really bad. But the nice thing about Evan Ingram in this spot is that we know what Carolina does on offense. They're going to funnel targets towards the middle of the field. They're strong on the outside, but they've given up actually a 25% target share to opposing tight ends this year. Evan Ingram is able to draw targets, like not as high last week, but he still is at least within that 15 to 20% target range most weeks. No Kadarius Toney this week. We'll see on Kenny Golladay, maybe. And it's pretty much just going to be him and Shepard. I expect Ingram to be a decent lock for about 6 to 7 targets. What he does with them, probably nothing. He'll probably have 3 catches for 15 yards and a fumble. However, you could do worse than Evan Ingram.
Mike, I looked for this as soon as I hit the waiver wire because I like Zach Ertz. Like, as soon as I hit the sheet, this was the first player I looked for, was up against Houston. Unfortunately, he's ranked 13th, so he just made it inside the cut. We're trying to find tight ends outside the top 15. He finished 13th, so he did not qualify.
Too good, man. Zach Ertz is too good.
Zach Ertz is too good. He was ranked too high. All right, so real quick, I'm writing for Trophy Smack right now. I just want to read off a quick segment that we have. It's called Waiver Wires to Trash, and I want to read what I wrote about. You guys go check it out at trophysmack.com. I'm just going to read my part about Evan Ingram. Ingram is the 12th most targeted tight end per game this season.
That's good.
In the 4 games he's played, he has given you no double-digit performances. Meanwhile, he's graded outside the top 50 for tight ends in PFF's receiving grades.
That's not good.
Sure, the Giants' schedule isn't the ringer against the tight ends coming up, but it's been relatively easy in 3 of the top 4. The only team that they face who's been decent up against tight end, or who has been a deterrent up against tight end, are the Saints. However, the Saints haven't played any tight end to note outside of arguably Hunter Henry before he became the dominant tight end.
The Saints have weirdly
Patriots.
been good against tight ends for like 6 years, though. I don't know.
Yeah, true. There are better plays out there. Don't get caught by your clickbait. Because if you're picking Evan Ingram, you really must be glutton for punishment. May I recommend a loser's tattoo for you over there at trophysmack.com?
Yeah.
There are ones with dragons, unicorns, and even ones proclaiming my mom loves fantasy losers. You probably don't need one, because if you're picking Evan Ingram this week, there's a flashing New York City size street line over your head telling all of your fantasy league mates you're an idiot.
Look, guys, just draft Travis Kelce, okay? If you have Travis Kelce, you don't have this problem.
We don't have to pick tight ends outside the top 15. If everybody drafts Travis Kelce. Hey, listen, we appreciate you guys for tuning in. Jacob, where can we find you? What you got going on, man?
You can always find me on Twitter, ff_RTDB. You can find me every week except for this one. I have to take a week off of the column, but you can usually find the Pareto Principles weekly on playerprofiler.com. I will probably make a little DFS thread in lieu of that this week, just so you can at least have something out there. You can find me every Friday and Saturday with my 2 shows, the Full Tilt Dynasty Network. That's the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast on Friday, and then on Saturday with no free squares. That's all. That's all I got.
Dude, I love it. I mean, there's so many things going on for all of us right now. We were talking about how busy we are. I wake up Monday morning through Thursday morning around 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. I hit the gym and then I go straight to work, pretty much make breakfast, then go back straight to work. I like all of us, part of the fantasy intervention. Like, it's just nonstop go for us. We're doing this for as much free time as we have. I mean, I'm only bartending 2 days a week just so I can try and get started in this industry. I know you're going to law school, nonstop, and yet you're still finding time to do all this. So we're very, very busy. We're trying to provide as much information as we can. So we appreciate y'all's support. You guys can do that by following us over there on Twitter at ff_intervention and at ffrtdb. You guys can also go check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/fantasy intervention. And yeah, go check out all of our articles that we're putting out. Give us ratings on the podcast, give us ratings on the YouTube channels. Go show your support. Go say thanks for helping y'all out. Anyways, we appreciate you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for listening, and thank you all for letting us intervene with your fantasy football life. We're out.